Hey everybody, it's Ryan Metzler here again, and today we're going to take a look at Resistor, which is a two-player card game in which each player is trying to make grid connections to their opponent's mainframe in order to raise its DEF-CON level up above 4. And the first player that's able to do so will win. However, you only know half of the information on the cards that you hold at any time, so you're kind of having to, I guess, take a little bit of a gamble, but also memorize as many things as possible in order to make sure that you're playing optimally. So real quick, we'll take a look at what you get inside of this box. We'll see how the game plays, and we'll come back at the end and get my opinions on Resistor. So here are the components of Resistor all set up for what is obviously a two-player game, as Resistor is a two-player game about attacking your partner's computer through these series of cables that connect between the two. So one player has their computer at DEF-CON 1 over here, the red player, and the other player has their computer at DEF-CON 1 on the other side. The goal in this game is to make your opponent go above DEF-CON 4. So they need to get to DEF-CON 4 and go one above that in order to lose the game. Or to shorten the board all the way to one card and see who has the better score at the end of it. So basically whoever has the lower DEF-CON would be the winner in that case. The way this game is going to work is that it's going to have information that is available to you and available to your opponent, but you'll have different information available. So each player will be holding two of these cards. Let's say that the red player is holding these two. They're going to be able to see this side of the information. So this one has some red lines on it with a resistor. And this one has a red and a blue line, actually two red and two blue lines on them. The other player can see the opposite side of these cards. So the blue player can see that we have a red line on one of them and crisscrossing blue lines on the other. Now, what this means is that obviously you have half of the information in the game about your cards. On your turn, whoever has fewer lines showing at the beginning of the game on each of these cards, which in this case is red, because blue is on all but one of the cards, whereas red is on all but 3 of the cards. So red will go first, and they must take these 3 actions right here. So these actions are flip over a card. When they do this, they will flip this over, and they're going to flip over any one card that's out here on this board. For example, they probably don't like this single blue line, and they would flip this over and align it appropriately. And now you can see that we have red lines here, and they've started making a connection over to their opponent's board. Great. Once they're done with this, they must take the other action. So for example, they could take a draw and trash action. When they do a draw and trash action, they can either draw a card and place it in their own hand or in their opponent's hand. So let's say they were going to place it in their opponent's hand. They would draw this card and place it in the opponent's hand, and they can see that on this side of the card is a red. So they would get to see the back, while their opponent gets to see the front, which is double blue, double red. They have half of the information. In addition, they must now discard one of their cards from their opponent's hand into a discard pile. So each player will always have 2 cards in hand. So pretty straightforward. You draw it, you put it in one player's hand, you get half of the information, and you discard one card from that other player's hand. Now, let's say that this is the other player's hand and this card is flipped the other way, and that they choose to discard this card here. When they do so, you're going to see both sides of the card, and there's a special icon on one of these cards called a resistor. When this gets discarded, anytime it gets discarded, your opponent, the player that's not currently the active player, gets to perform a flip action. So now, since this is discarded, our opponent, the blue player, could flip a card over. And maybe they decide to flip this one so that they now have a blue line going across the board on that card. Of course, they didn't know what was on the other side, but you get the idea. The final action you have to take is switch out. So, when you have switch out, what you're going to do is you're going to take one card from the board and add it to your hand, or your opponent's hand. So you would take it and add it to your opponent's hand, always making sure that the side you can see is the side that was already on the table. Let's say you decided you wanted to get rid of this card, and you place it in your opponent's hand. You can then take a card from their hand and place it out on the board, again with the side that you could see showing, in whatever orientation you wanted. So maybe you want it in this orientation right here. Once your turn is done, you've done all 3 of your actions, you're going to check and see if you have a continuous line all the way from your side of the board over to your opponent's side of the board. So in this case, we'll see we have red line, red line. Unfortunately, no, it stops here at this blue line. If we orient this like this, does it work? Red line, red line, red line, no. So we would need to work it around. And basically your goal is to try and make lines that connect all the way across to your opponent. If this happens, their DEF-CON level will go up by 1. And that is essentially scoring. You're increasing their DEF-CON level. If it happens where you happen to get 2 lines all the way across without them ever passing through the same chip, like these 2 lines are doing, passing through the same chip, you would do 2 levels to them. And of course, on their turn, they would be trying to revert it so that you don't have a straight line and that they themselves have a straight line back to you. And you'll see that all of these will be flipped over to their color, so it indicates that it's their turn to take their actions. If at any time something ends up where there is a resistor, let's see if there's any out here. If not, we'll simply place this one out here. A resistor is revealed on the board. What happens now is you look and see if you have any lines that go from that resistor all the way back, let's orient this like this, all the way back to your mainframe. If they do and your DEFCON level is above 1, you will actually heal 1 DEFCON level back down. That's good for you because basically it gives you 1 more point that you can worry about later. So you live a little bit longer. This will happen for both players. So if there was a line, this one's purely good for red because there can't be a blue line all the way to this resistor. But anyhow, once you're done resolving this, any healing that might happen, you're going to flip over any cards that have a line on them between you and the resistor. So in this case, every card will flip over and you would reconnect them. So you're going to flip that over here, flip that over there. All of these are going to flip except for the resistor. We can leave that one alone. But all of these are going to flip. And when we're done with that, the resistor is going to vanish and we'll close the board. So the board gets smaller. Now that there's another resistor, we have to resolve this one as well. So it can't possibly heal blue and it won't heal red, but we would then flip all of the cards back over again and then shorten our board yet another time. And so you'll see that the board will shrink as the game goes on, making it easier and easier to score points against your opponents and harder to defend yourself, of course. So the game will end when one player goes above DEFCON 4, or when this board is shortened to only 1 card, and then the player that is closer to DEFCON 1 will be the winner. Now, if you'd like, there is an additional action card you can add in that's called Lockdown, and every player would have to take this action on their turn. You would flip it over, and you would place out your Lockdown card, which is a card that prevents the card from being adjusted in any way for that turn. So now, the red player says, okay, you can't adjust this card, but the card must have at least both colors of line on it, so you can't lock down one of your own cards only. You have to lock down a card that is available to both players, but it simply prevents it from being modified for the whole turn until you move this again. So just a little bit of an extra strategic option to add into the game if you'd like to add a little bit more complexity. Anytime you lose cards, you of course draw them from this really cool thing that keeps the cards hidden from both players and has this awesome setup. These pull out and it actually goes back into the game and stores it entirely whole. So overall, kind of a cool little concept, but that is Resistor. And there you have it. That is Resistor from Level 99 Games. This game is very unique. It's part of what they call the duelist line, obviously meaning that they're 2-player games, very head-to-head. And this game has several aspects that you really have to pay attention to. One is, of course, just making sure that you're paying attention to connecting lines across the board. That seems obvious. The second part is making sure to remember information that you've seen before as you send cards out of that line or add them back in order to flip them over later. This is very, very important, and there's a huge memory aspect to this game because simply remembering what's on the other side of a card can make your play. Sometimes you might want to flip that card over, other times you know that you definitely don't want it flipped over, and sometimes if it's in your partner or your opponent's hand, you know that you want it discarded from the game because there's no way that card is good for you. So paying a lot of attention to that and memorizing things is going to be huge. The game is not perfect, of course, if you don't have a good memory, and also if you just don't know some of the information, you could make a poor mistake and end up hurting yourself. But overall, there's quite a bit of strategy to it. I really enjoy it. I'm not sure my wife enjoys it as much as I do, which means it may not get played as much as I would like. But I think overall, a very interesting head-on-head card game with a unique theme, a really cool box that holds the cards, and some challenging gameplay that rewards memory and smart play. So if that sounds good to you, check it out. That is Resistor from Level 99 Games.
Thanks so much for watching the Dice Tower videos. Find more great videos and reviews as well as our top-rated audio podcast at Dicetower.com. You can also find other great shows at Dicetowernetwork.com. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower. The Dice Tower is sponsored by Cool Stuff Inc., where you can find great games for great prices. Cool stuff in stock. Check them out at CoolStuffInc.com.